Honestly, the 2025 quarterback class was sort of odd, as you had the runaway favorite in Cam Ward, who went number 1 overall. You saw Shedeur Sanders fall to the later rounds, and then Jackson Dart was taken by the Giants. Those were sort of the biggest names in the draft class. Then you had Quinn Ewers fall to the later round, and Tyler Shuck surprisingly go in the second, and it was just weird. Somewhere nestled between all those other quarterbacks was Dillon Gabriel, a guy who was a college football superstar, seemingly hung around for a decade, and has an opportunity in Cleveland to make an impact. In today's video, we're going to continue my Rookie Spotlight series, as we will take a look at the rise of Dillon Gabriel, his crazy college career, and how he could fit with the Cleveland Browns. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about the rise of Dillon Gabriel. Okay, so in order to understand how he got to this point, we first need to go back in time, as he grew up in the town of Milani, Hawaii, which is just a few miles away from Honolulu, on the island of Oahu. He also grew up just a few miles from where Marcus Mariota played high school football, and his dad had also been a quarterback for the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors in the 80s and 90s. Mariota was a quarterback that Dillon always looked up to as a kid, and was a huge reason he decided to pursue playing the quarterback position itself, or even just football in general. Dillon said, quote, "Mariota was a guy I looked up to as a role model. When you're growing up and you have that kind of direct example of a guy playing at a high level, and then you see him go off to the NFL, it's like you can see the path and you can believe it." He ended up attending Milani High School from 2015 to 2019 and played football there, hoping to learn under Mackenzie Milton, who had also quickly become a high-ranking recruit from the state of Hawaii. As a freshman, Gabriel didn't see the field much behind Milton, who was the starter for that team before leaving for UCF, but he took over as a starter his sophomore year in 2016. He ended up throwing for 2,700 yards and 28 touchdowns en route to a D2 state title game, but it wasn't enough to garner much attention. His only offer was from Army, who was coached by Jeff Monken, and who had also coached his dad back at Hawaii in the 80s. It was more of the same in 2017, as during Dillon's junior year, he managed to lead Milani to the state title game again, and passed for 2,900 yards with 32 touchdowns. He still only had that one offer from Army, and since that was his only offer, he would commit to the Knights. They ran the triple option, and that was going to greatly hinder his abilities. His commitment to Army would mean he could play at the FBS level. It would not end up lasting long though, as Dillon sort of blew up as a senior, finishing as the Gatorade Player of the Year after throwing for 3,800 yards and 38 touchdowns, leading them to a 10-3 season with a loss to St. Louis High School in the state title. Mackenzie Milton was able to get UCF's attention on Gabriel, and they offered him before the season was over. He quickly flipped from Army to UCF, and despite a few visits to schools like Georgia, he stuck it out with the Knights and signed with them as a member of the class of 2019. He finished his time in Hawaii rated as a 3-star recruit and the 9th best player in the state. He's also the 20th best quarterback in the class, and how would he end up doing thousands of miles away in Orlando? Well, let's take a look. When Dillon got to UCF in 2019, he was already sitting behind Notre Dame transfer Brandon Wimbush, who the staff hoped could take over for Mackenzie Milton, but Wimbush struggled badly in his first game against Florida A&M, so Josh Heupel put in Gabriel to finish out the game. He finished with 127 yards and 3 touchdowns, and was the starter from there on out. He'd helped lead the Knights to a 10-3 season, complete with a win over Marshall in their bowl game. He finished the season with 3,700 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 7 picks. Despite playing a shorter season in 2020, he was able to go 6-4 and improved his output compared to the last season. This was partly due to Alex Golesh becoming the offensive coordinator from Jeff Lebby, and UCF moving to an offense that stressed passing more. He finished the year throwing for 3,600 yards with 32 touchdowns and just 4 picks. They'd end up losing the Boca Raton Bowl to BYU, but Dillon would make second team All-AAC. His true junior season in 2021 looked like it would be his best. After losing Josh Heupel to Tennessee, the Knights just hired Gus Malzahn, who had been fired from Auburn, as well as an up-and-coming offensive coordinator by the name of G.J. Kinney to run a new offense. Dillon was comfortably the starter over freshman Mikey Keene, and he showed it a few weeks in. After at one point being down 21-0 against Boise State, Dillon organized a comeback with 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, and they won. He then followed it up with a huge game against Bethune-Cookman before the team would travel to Louisville. Sadly, disaster would strike at the end of that game, as Dillon hurt himself while receiving a lateral, and it'd be a season-ending broken clavicle. It wouldn't need surgery, but his career at UCF was probably over. Instead of retiring, he entered the transfer portal in hopes another team would take a chance on him. Originally, another team did, as UCLA, who was led by Chip Kelly, decided to sign him late in 2021, but a few weeks later, he changed his mind and ended up going to Oklahoma to be with new head coach Brent Venable. The Oklahoma offense in 2020 was spearheaded by offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby, offensive coordinator at UCF under Heupel, and this was a big reason why Gabriel decided to go there. He was selected as the preseason Big 12 Newcomer of the Year, but they would finish with a 6-6 record and a loss to Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl. But would ultimately have to sit out a couple, like the Texas one due to a concussion, and was constantly fighting off smaller injuries. He ended with 3,200 yards and 25 touchdowns, while being a second-team All-Big 12 player. Then, they would improve as they go 10-3 in his second season, and a lot of that was due to Dillon's performance. He ended up leading the Sooners to a 7-0 start, but then they started to struggle a little bit, as he just threw for over 100 yards and a pick against Kansas, and then they also lost to Oklahoma State. Because of losses to KU and Oklahoma State, they would not play in the Big 12 championship, and he finished the year with 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 6 picks, and was named to the first team All-Big 12. After that, he announced he'd be entering his name in the portal once again, as Jeff Lebby left for Mississippi State, and Oklahoma wanted Jackson Arnold to be their guy. Gabriel would end up transferring to Oregon for one final season, where this year, he seemingly put it all together. The Ducks, he ended up throwing for 3,857 yards, with 30 touchdowns and 6 picks, and at one point, it looked like he could be a serious Heisman contender. Gabriel had a couple of noteworthy games, and also led into a couple of big wins, including road victories over Michigan, a home win over number 20 Illinois, and then a home win over number 2 Ohio State. He also had 4 touchdowns against number 3 Penn State in the Big Ten Championship, but then against Ohio State, the team just sort of disappeared as they got killed 41-21 and missed out on winning a title. Gabriel ended up having a really good year as he threw for 3,900 yards and 30 touchdowns, as well as 7 more rushing scores, but despite going undefeated, it felt like it didn't mean anything, as Oregon sort of lost early, and while Ohio State was the eventual champions, it felt like it was a terrible upset. Still though, Dillon Gabriel would have to have a short memory, as he would now be going off to the NFL, but where would he go? That was a huge question mark, as a lot of NFL GMs were worried about his size, as he was only 5'11", and also did not have much weight on his frame. He was not talked about in first-round conversations with guys like Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, or Jackson Dart, but he had been a starter for 3 different football teams over 6 years and led Oregon to a Big Ten title. Some thought he had the pedigree to overcome concerns about his size and height, and many thought he could be a hidden gem. He played in a grand total of 64 college games across 6 years, which is the highest total of any quarterback in FBS football history. Eventually, the Browns made a surprising addition to their quarterback room, as they would take Dillon Gabriel at pick number 94. They also grabbed Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round, and this will be a closely watched quarterback battle. Honestly, one of them is likely gone after this year, as there's no point in developing 2. Apparently, there was not another team interested in Gabriel inside the first 100 picks, but with uncertainty about whether he'd be available in the later rounds, the Browns decided to select him. Typically, physical outliers don't succeed in a sport like football, and Gabriel is definitely one of them, but it doesn't mean he won't. No matter what though, he has a steep climb. Browns executive vice president said, quote, "We spent a lot of time with Dillon throughout this process. We brought him in right after the combine and did the private visit and workouts in Eugene, and he had a decorated college career, was very accurate and very poised. We just thought he had a very well-rounded game." So the fate of the 2025 Cleveland Browns season mostly rides on the team's defense and their rushing attack, but despite that, the Browns quarterback competition will be the biggest storyline, given they have a ton of options, which include 5 of them, as one of them is Kenny Pickett, then you have Joe Flacco, and then also Shedeur and Gabriel. Flacco is projected to be the team's starter due to him being a veteran and having experience with the Browns, and even if Flacco starts week 1, there could be a starter change by the end of the year, as they're eventually going to want to turn it over to a guy who could actually lead them into the future. Flacco doesn't have much time left. This preseason will likely be crucial for Gabriel, as while he has been performing well in practices, using the preseason games as a test run will be huge for him, and we'll see what he's made of. Maybe he'll be the next hidden round gem found in the 3rd round, or he'll just slip away and be a bust. Either way, this is something to watch, and I'm also curious to see what's going to happen to Shedeur Sanders. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but what do you guys think? If you're an Oregon, Ohio State, UCF, or Browns fan, what do you think of Dillon Gabriel? How do you think he'll do in the NFL? And which rookie should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.